Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back once again to our daily English news edition. I'm Daniel Cook, your host, Monday through Saturday, presenting you a translated version of today's top news stories. Yesterday's late-night meeting between the Prime Minister and the Assembly Speaker did result in a tenuous agreement, but not in a true consensus. In fact, it could be said that it was 2 steps backward for the reform. Sources say that the meeting was tense throughout and that they only reached an agreement at the very end of their discussion. They agreed that in addition to the final draft, 2 more will be presented at the ad hoc commission, the draft of the Ministry of Justice experts and the draft of the opposition experts. The Prime Minister did not withdraw from his stance and still wants to exclude the opinions of the other 2 groups from the final draft. Meanwhile, the Minister of Justice and the Assembly Speaker do not accept the draft as it is, and without their votes, the reform cannot be adopted. There is no doubt that the next few hours will be decisive for the fate of the justice reform and for the political stability in the country. The government is rushing to complete the reform with the goal of gaining the recommendations of Brussels in April to open EU negotiations. On Friday, the ad hoc commission will gather again to discuss the draft of the high-level experts. The invitation that was sent out to the experts seems to indicate that the high-level draft will be the only one considered. Today, the negotiations continued to try and overcome the stalemate, with the Prime Minister heading to Ilir Meta's office for a meeting of about 2 hours. Around noon, the Assembly Speaker met with the EU Ambassador, Roman Vlahutin, and reportedly, he highlighted that it is the responsibility of the ad hoc commission and of all the political parties to reach the necessary consensus based on the Venice Commission recommendations. Earlier today, Vlahutin also held a meeting with the third parties for the justice reform, declaring that now is a good time to encourage all stakeholders to express their priorities for the coming months. With the coming meeting of the Ad Hoc Commission for Justice Reform tomorrow, the Democratic chairman has been holding meetings today with his party experts and the Democratic members of the Commission. The Democrats stand by their position that the justice reform draft should be viewed as incomplete until it reflects all 138 Venice recommendations. They have decided not to send a parallel draft to the Venice Commission, but to insist on consensus until the very last minutes of the ad hoc commission. If the majority still refuses to include the 11 recommendations that were left out, the Democrats will send a letter of clarification to Venice. In the letter, they will express their concern about the majority's unwillingness to create a consensual draft. They will also include their evidence that the majority is trying to use the draft to control the justice system. Invited to speak on the program Tonight Il Vetare, the Democratic experts for justice reform gave their opinions of the final draft. The Democratic expert Albania said that the high-level experts had the support they needed to overcome the stalemate, but instead they chose to politicize the reform. She said that the draft does not reflect the Venice recommendations, and she clarified that the opposition's proposal for a 2/3 qualified majority would have stopped some of the abuse. Another of the experts, Gazmend Bardi, said that alternative options were not even considered. The Democratic experts say that there are 11 discrepancies between the final draft and the Venice recommendations. They say that the mandate of the Prosecutor General will be terminated according to the draft, which is not what the high-level experts said when they were invited to the program. The Interior Minister Saimir Tahiri commented on the justice reform today, saying that it must be completed as soon as possible. He made the following statement: "The problems in the justice system are evident, and the reform must be realized in a rapid manner. The police are trying to do their duty to the best of their ability, showing zero tolerance for crime, but the courts release many of the criminals that they arrest. This makes the work of the state police very difficult," said Tahiri. He went on to say that the illegal possession of arms must be made a serious criminal offense and that the punishment for this offense should not be softened. He continued, "It would be dangerous for the penalty for this offense to be softened. I have spoken with the Minister of Justice about this issue, and the police, the prosecution, and the courts need to progress at the same pace. Corrupt officials and violators of the law must get the punishment they deserve. Only in this way can Albania become safer, said Tahiri. The International Monetary Fund has ranked Albania among the lowest countries in the world in terms of development of financial markets. The World Financial Development Index, published by the IMF, ranks Albania 107th out of 183 countries that were included in the study. The country fared a little better in the Index of Development of Financial Institutions, where it is ranked in the 90th place. The report divides all countries according to a color code, in which red represents the lowest level of financial system development and blue represents the highest. Albania is among the red countries. The financial sector is being significantly developed across the globe, and many modern financial systems are being applied, presenting many financial alternatives for savings. In Albania, the financial system remains dominated by traditional banks, and more modern systems have barely been introduced. Albania is the only country in the region that does not have a stock exchange. The Institute of Public Health reports that around 11,000 people have come down with the flu this week, as we are now in the peak season for viruses and respiratory infections. According to Dr. Artan Simaku, the flu virus is more prevalent among children, the elderly, and pregnant women, as well as people with weak immune systems and chronic diseases. He says that the flu season generally reaches its peak by the end of January. Most citizens receive an anti-flu vaccine in November, but the doctors recommend getting one in January as well. They would like to remind everyone to consult a doctor before taking antibiotics or attempting another self-medication. Albania will soon be the home of the Regional Center Against Violent Extremism, according to the Minister of Social Welfare, Blendi Klosi. Speaking today at a conference, he talked about the purpose of the center. The center will soon be opened in Albania with the support of our strategic partners, he said. It will focus on education and religious tolerance. Different religious communities will work together to reflect the unique religious coexistence in Albania. Also speaking at the conference, the French ambassador gave a reminder that terrorism should not be confused with Islamic belief. He said, "It is unacceptable to relate terrorism with belief in Islam, which does not have terrorism at its foundation." The conference was organized to promote education and democracy as weapons against extremism, an ever-present concern around the world. Thanks for joining us again for our daily English news edition. We hope you have a great night and see you tomorrow at the same time.